Hello, welcome to Worldview Connections. This is the beginning series called Becoming Well-Informed Friend. The Worldview Connections presentations here begins with the president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Dallin H, gave his first speech as the president of the church at BYU on February 10th, 2026. That was the 150th anniversary of BYU. He titled his speech, Coming Closer to Jesus Christ. The main points he brought up specifically were doctrinal issues for Latter-day Saints. Quote, concerns about some historical, doctrinal, or social issues connected with the church. He said, I want to help all our members overcome present or future doubts. Whatever those doubts, the way to overcome them is to get closer to our Savior, Jesus Christ. He listed 4 ways to draw closer to our Savior. Quote, I share 4 impressions that will draw us closer to our Savior. First, strengthen our faith in Him. Second, increase our humility. Third, seek help from others. Fourth, be patient. In this video, we will not be covering every aspect of this speech. We'll even refer to some other speeches of some of his predecessors. But the main objective was, again, to overcome questions about the Lord's doctrine, kind of rewording that theme. President Oaks quoted a previous president of the church, Ezra Taft Benson, in saying, let us choose to be humble. And he talked about how having humility was to be teachable. Being humble is to be teachable, to actually seek that understanding of something. The third section we want to focus on, it was titled Seek Help from Others. This line specifically jumped out, quote, don't be persuaded by false or inaccurate information. Discuss your concerns with faithful, well-informed friends. And that's what inspired the creation of this series. The question is, how can you, the viewer, become a well-informed friend? If you are in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints or not, either way, we invite all of you to engage in this. There are resources to help you to be informed about the doctrinal issues for Latter-day Saints, as he referred to it, President Oaks, and, quote, concerns about some historical, doctrinal, or social issues connected with the church mentioned by President Oaks. Worldview Connections, we will only be citing sources on these issues directly from the teachings of the LDS churches, as the members referred to as prophets, seers, and revelators. The church's official website, the materials, including LDS scriptures, and he mentioned this phrase, he said this phrase, so we emphasize not speculation and false information, quote unquote, that President Oaks warned us about. So that became the next banner idea, was that there's no speculation and false information. We're going to talk about these ideas and how do we know the historical and theological and philosophical foundations and sources on some of these things. So yeah, that became a big phrase. No speculation and false information. How do you do that? Well, by only citing information from the church's official sources, information from the church's leaders and materials. And so we got thinking about this, some of my colleagues and I that contribute to these sources. Some of the historical background leading into this with President Oaks' speech years ago, before President Oaks, the president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Russell M. Nelson, in the Easter 2021 April General Conference of the church, he spoke of, quote, lazy learners and lax disciples, quote unquote. That's a phrase that became very well known by members and critics of the church. Versus, as he called them, engaged learners and, quote, true disciples, unquote. So, are you a lazy learner or an engaged learner? Are you, that word lax, that kind of a sloppy, lazy, careless disciple, which the word disciple itself can be examined not to really fit the perimeter of that. But anyway, true disciples, right? So also another reference before that was the apostle of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Elder M. Russell Ballard. He gave an address to church educational religious educators, the CES program, on February 26, 2016. So this is 10 years before President Oaks, at the Salt Lake Tabernacle. He titled his speech, "The Opportunities and Responsibilities of CES Teachers in the 21st Century." Quote, quoting Elder Ballard, "It was only a generation ago that our young people's access to information about our history, doctrine, and practices was basically limited to materials printed by the church. Few students came in contact with alternative interpretations. Mostly, our young people lived a sheltered life." He went on to say, "Our curriculum at that time, though well-meaning, did not prepare students for today, a day when students have instant access to virtually everything about the church from every possible point of view. To name a few such topics, he specifically mentioned these: polygamy, seer stones, different accounts of the first vision," that's referring to Joseph Smith's visitation of the Father and the Son experience, "the process of the translation of the Book of Mormon or the Book of Abraham, gender issues, race in the priesthood, or a heavenly mother," unquote. So those are direct references from a top leader of the church, which is rare. And he was addressing these teachers of the church education system. These are institute teachers, seminary teachers. Many of them are also correlating the curriculum of the church for some of the local congregations, what the church calls wards, and larger clusters of these wards they call stakes, S-T-A-K-E, stakes, not the food steak. But he was addressing these leaders of these, feeding these ideas to the members. So he went on to say, "We are making extraordinary efforts to provide accurate context and understanding of the teachings of the Restoration. A prime example of this effort is the 11 Gospel Topics essays on LDS.org that provide balanced and reliable interpretations of the facts for controversial and unfamiliar church-related subjects." He finished this point by saying, "It is important that you know the content in these essays like you know the back of your hand." So that is also a part of this video series to encourage you to do this, what he's talking about, as President Oaks talked about, being informed friends, right? And here is the apostle of the church. He's now passed away, but Elder Ballard saying, hey, know the content of these essays, and we'll be sharing these resources in the video. But you can go on LDS.org, look up gospel topic essays. There's many other ones since this time, when 10 years ago when he gave this speech. I want to go into a little bit more of what he said. He said, "You should also become familiar with the Joseph Smith Papers website." So that's the Joseph Smith Papers project. That will also share a link to that. "And the church history section on LDS.org and other resources by faithful LDS scholars," unquote. So these projects reflect what Elder Ballard referred to as the, later on in his speech, he said, quote, "effort for gospel transparency," unquote. So there were a lot of critics of the church and members of the church who were concerned that they were learning things they felt had not been presented to them clearly or at all by the church leaders through their curriculum, Sunday school manuals, materials of the church in general. And so in this speech, he's saying we want these essays to guide you in this understanding, but to become more transparent with our history and with the theological developments of the church. So let's address the doctrinal issues for the Latter-day Saints, and the, President Oaks referred to the concerns about some historical, doctrinal, or social issues connected with the church. So on the official church website, one important source for historical and theological context is the Joseph Smith Papers project, and there it is right there, Joseph Smith Papers, josephsmithpapers.org. Some of these, as you see, there are some brown tabs above the books. These are in print, and not all of them are in print. This is still an ongoing process. The church has many professional scholars and historians, researchers who are on the payroll of the church. And I've heard good things about these researchers and historians who are what President Oaks calls faithful, believing members and disciples that President Nilsson would say are engaged. They're not lax learner disciples. They are not lazy learners. And so we promote everyone to be engaged and becoming more, as President Oaks says, well-informed. So these are ways to do that. And a key point, or I should say an important background to many of these issues comes out of also some of these, specifically the Joseph Smith papers. If you go into, they have journals and numbered them. In this picture you see what they call journals, volume 2. So these are building knowledge of the historical context during that time of Nauvoo. Specifically, it's like that last 5 years of Joseph Smith's life that really Joseph Smith, the founder of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, went into theological doctrines and ideas that have really become the things that have set the church apart from many other churches and religions. So the gospel topic essays, and these are links to them, but these are the titles of the essays: Plural Marriage in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Plural Marriage in Kirtland and Nauvoo. So in other words, they mention polygamy and polyandry, Joseph Smith being married to teenage girls. These are acknowledged in the essays, historical and documented, and also Joseph Smith with women who were already married to other men, et cetera, et cetera. So these essays get into the plural marriage and the families in early Utah. And later, when the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints was releasing what they called a manifesto, and there were actually a few of those, to end plural marriage into the late 1800s, into the early 1900s, so that's the early 20th century. There are still some things we can see on the church website that provides a lot of information about this history. There was the case study, what I call a case study, but it's a lot of details into this about the Whitney family and with Joseph Smith in Nauvoo, Illinois. So this is in the 1840s. They have many documents that are printed and really good fidelity images on this website. So you can see Joseph Smith had a revelation for Newell K. Whitney and his family. So in Nauvoo in 1842, so you get into this where he wrote a letter that this link here, in his own writing to Newell K. Whitney and their daughter Sarah, who he was proposing to be sealed to, and who he was basically becoming a part of their family eternally. And continuing on, other gospel topic essays: the Book of Mormon translation, Book of Mormon and DNA studies, translation and historicity of the Book of Abraham, race and the priesthood, and peace and violence among 19th century Latter-day Saints. In essence, that's getting into Brigham Young's leadership and how that rhetoric of Old Testament kind of blood atonement things fed into and led into what people feel caused people in and out of the church. Some critics especially feel that Brigham Young's rhetoric led to the Mountain Meadow Massacre. That's a historic event in the church's history in Utah to also research. But the church has a lot of that history on the website. Another source for topic is the Council of 50 in Nauvoo, Illinois. This has been a long time awaiting for many people, historians and researchers. It's right there on the josephsmithpapers.org. So that topic is there. We just want to encourage you to also do your own homework and don't believe anything we present. Look into it also. Make sure you understand the details. There's also a Q&A about the Council of 50 in Nauvoo, and so you can look up that topic there. It's really interesting. Gives you a lot of background into that, what that was. So some of our sources. Hope you enjoyed some of this content here, just getting started with this, and hope you stay with us and subscribe if you like what we're producing, and please look at some of our previous videos on other topics about religion and other things. Thank you and have a good day.